Nous savons qu'il existe une demande de soins à domicile dans tout le pays et que de nombreux Canadiens recherchent la flexibilité d'engager des fournisseurs de soins par l'intermédiaire d'organisations qui embauchent et déploient des travailleurs à domicile auprès de divers clients. But let me be clear, we're not including placement agencies. La stabilité est importante pour tous nos programmes, y compris pour les aides-soignants. C'est pourquoi nous continuerons à traiter les demandes existantes et nous visons à faire évoluer nos prochains projets pilotes vers un programme permanent. Je communiquerai de plus amples détails ultérieurement. For decades, generations of foreign domestic workers and caregivers have fought hard for this recognition. I believe these changes will provide families with the services they need and continue to advance protections for home care workers. This is something that's long overdue, and this is one of our ways to tell home care workers that we see you and we've heard you. It's time that we create programs that work for caregivers and not leave them behind and meet the need of our communities. Thank you, merci, and I'm glad to take your questions at this point.
It's just me.
Thank you for waiting, first of all, for this. Okay.
I just want to start off by clarifying exactly when this pilot starts and how quickly you might be able to process these applications, just given the ongoing backlogs at IRCC.
Yeah, so I guess last question first. That's a work in progress. We still do have a backlog under the pilots. There's an issue of fairness in there, and the caregivers and advocacy folks for caregivers today were pointing out that there will have to be a look at some of the rules currently in place, particularly the language rules that are butting people up against the wall of permanent residency because they can't pass their level language 5. So there's a fairness aspect that my team needs to attack in the next step of this process. The pilot, we are looking at launching it as early as this fall, as late, and we'll be pushing for this as early in 2025. And then for the backlog, there is a constant discussion every year about our levels plan. Clearly, Canada needs more caregivers. Clearly, those people need their rights protected, so it'll be an ongoing discussion, but it's one that, given the backlog, we'll want to be able to look at those numbers and process them over the next few years, including the first cohort of people that will be entitled to PR. Obviously, there are people here today that have been fighting for the same thing that are looking to get that 12-month experience. And so within that cohort, looking at some elements of fairness. As a principle, it's not only the right message to send, it's the right policy to roll out today. But again, making sure that the logistics work and the timing works is also a consideration, principally out of fairness for all the people that have applied and are looking to come to Canada.
Okay, so that applies to the fact that some of these programs are going to be expiring this month,
right?
And if this pilot doesn't launch until the fall.
We have enough, and this is where backlog sadly plays in our advantage, is we have enough folks to fill the spots that are there. Those programs are no longer taking applications because they're well oversubscribed, but they do formally terminate in mid-June, both of those pilot programs, with the new one to launch later. It will not affect the flow of people coming to the country, but I think there was a lot of trepidation as to whether the Government of Canada was considering doing something else, and I think here today we're reassuring them we are doing something else, something actually much more positive.
Just want to confirm, is this my third question?
You're the only one. You can have probably 3 or 4 more if you want.
Keep going then. Okay. I want to, just given that there's an audience here who you just spoke with, saying yes, this is a great measure, but there's still work that needs to be done. What did you hear from them? What are they saying?
What do you want to hear from them? Because they're much more for.
Well, let's see how you interpreted this meeting.
So this meeting was, I think, productive. Everyone is happy about the announcement today. We focused on 2 or 3 other elements that really touch the community in particular. The broad program on regularization that our government is working on. I have said recently, but it's no secret to anyone that there are challenges in and around gaining that consensus in government as to whether a broad regularization program is the right thing to do at this point. Doesn't change the mandate letter that was issued to the minister at the time from the Prime Minister that we have to look at pathways towards regularization of people that have been here in Canada for a long time and deserve to be Canadian. And so that's sort of something that is still very much in the mix. They were here to advocate very much for the regularization of people that have been in the home caregiving space, and have for whether it is abuse, exploitation, falling out of status, inability to necessarily meet some of the strict permanent residency parameters that we've put into place. Been here, have kids, are Canadians by any other name, but cannot get that paperwork. It doesn't change that resolve, but what that looks like right now is still quite uncertain. So they're here advocating and pushing me, as they should, on those elements. And then consistency in what you mentioned in your question, which is how we make the current programs, which have, my department loves pilot projects, how it makes it more consistent with what the announcement is today, which is a very good, as one of the people around the table said, it's been 20 years in the making. People have been pushing for it, and highlighting a lot of the difficult positions people are put in with not having a direct permanent residency stream, and finally seeing the light of day. So that is a positive thing. And then the next steps in and around, again, that making sure we clear the backlog, making sure there are more resources for people that are in those vulnerable positions as caregivers. A lot of talk about people's families and being the psychological and mental health impact that this has had on people's families. It's no secret to anyone that we are talking often about women, more often than not from the Philippines, that have seen their family situation severely impacted, if not devastated, by a program that, while it's very popular in Canada, has had effects on their lives, their lived experience, in fact, their impression of Canada once they become PR or citizens.
I'll shift gears a little bit, and I'll go back to it, I promise. We're hearing from Palestinian families, those working to help Palestinians resettle here in Canada, saying, yes, it's great now that there's programs that allow them to apply for worker permits and therefore access health insurance, but kind of the same issue, right? That the applications are taking far too long. What is your message to them? How are you addressing those delays? Well,
we rushed to get this program out at the end of December, launched in early January. The assumption was that it would have cooperation with the folks that actually control the border, which is not Canada, the Israeli Minister of Defense or the Egyptian government. It is not a program that is one that has had the level of success that we all would have hoped. We all would have hoped that there would have been a ceasefire and a release of hostages by now. That isn't the case. And so there are things that Canada controls, there are things that Canada does not control. It doesn't change the fact that I or Minister Joly or anyone in our cabinet keep pushing not only for a ceasefire, the release of hostages, but also a process to get the vulnerable out if they can. Some people have taken matters into their own hand and had to pay exorbitant bribes to groups to get them to Cairo. Once they're safe, we have adapted the program not only to expand it, like I announced officially about a week ago, but to be more flexible in bringing people to Canada. We've issued about 500 visas in various categories, but we're looking to bring 5,000 in as well. There are, I think it's no secret to anyone that when you list Hamas that is a terrorist group as a terrorist group, that impacts the screening process and the time associated to that. And that's something that we have to continue to work on as we make sure that those people that are able to get to a safe place, notably Cairo, can go through the biometrics process, the security screening, and then on to Canada if they so choose once the visa is issued. Again, we are pushing as hard as we can to get people out. We have had some success on the consular level, getting our own Canadians and permanent residents out. But now is the next step of working to help getting people that have a connection to Canada that aren't Canadian or aren't permanent residents properly screened, and then on to Canada where they can come here and get supports and a work permit. This is a unique program compared to our international partners. We have talked to a number of our partners, other countries, about the programs they would contemplate, and they're looking to mirror that. But it is very unique, and I think that's one that, despite the fact that it has not been the success we had wanted it to be, is one that we can be quite proud of. But no one should really be celebrating any sort of success until people are safe and that we have people in Canada while we continue to look for a ceasefire and the release of hostages.
I think the concern for these folks is that, once